Hello Internet. I asked for questions and boy did you deliver with more than 7,000, so let's get started. If you could have 30 of the greatest minds work for 30 years, what would you have them work on? Immortality. Aging is a degenerative fatal disease of the genes in the same way Parkinson's is. We are trying to cure Parkinson's with gene therapy along with leukemia, multiple melanoma, and others. Why not aging? Well, because most people think of getting old and dying as a beautiful part of the life cycle. It isn't. With 30 years of genius, we could grasp control of our genetics and gain eternity. Since you're pro-immortality, how would you solve overpopulation? I'm not sold on overpopulation as a problem. Birth rates have been going nothing but down, and until we build that decent sphere we aren't anywhere near the carrying capacity of the solar system. And immortality is exactly the sort of thing that makes crazy long-term sustainability projects possible. First date ideas. Scary experiences increase the probability of bonding. This explains horror movies. If you want the date to go well, do them. If you don't. Why did you move to the book? I'm sure I've answered this before, but everyone keeps asking, so the whole story in one place. I grew up in the Empire State, starting in the suburbs, which I didn't like that much, then went to college in the wilds of upstate, which I liked better. But it wasn't for me forever, so next stop, big city. New York was the obvious choice, but because I was raised in its shadow, New York felt a bit like a step backward in life. I discovered around this time I had Irish dual citizenship through a series of random events which opened up the U and her largest city, London. I knew if I didn't live abroad while still free of life censures I never would, which made it all the more reason to go. I applied to an economics master's program in London, was accepted, and went and stayed for more than a decade. It turned out great. When you were leaving school, try the adventurous path. You can always fall back on the unknown later. Destin and Brady are simultaneously bitten by venomous snakes. You have one vial of antivenom. Who do you save and why? Sounds like we're in a dangerous place. Sounds like I need to keep that antivenom while I go get help. As you co-host 2 podcasts, what is it about podcasts that appeals to you? So I do have 2 podcasts that I'm putting on the screen now that you should totally click and go listen to. YouTube is how I spend most of me work energy, despite what you might think from the CGP Grey Reddit posts, but podcasts allow me to, with fewer of me hours, make lots of hours of stuff for other people to enjoy. Ostensibly, I'm doing this because I hit 2 million subscribers, but I'm way more impressed that these short videos, according to YouTube, have engaged more than a millennia of human attention. At least I was impressed until I did some back-of-the-envelope calculations and realized that the podcast has eaten up 3 millennia of human attention, which makes the time return on me time for podcasting astounding. So the bottom line is that these projects are rewarding in different ways. Have you clicked yet? Go click. Seriously, do it right now. I'd love to see this number get even bigger. Do you move your hands while recording? Of course. Thoughts on standardized testing. Standardized tests measure how good you are at school. Same with your report card. They don't measure your understanding, and once you accept that, they're easier to deal with. What do you miss most from the early days of the internet? Modem sounds. Correct order to view the Star Wars films. 4, 5, 6, 7. What do you consider success in life? I measure success by what % of me time I have control over. Reaching 100 isn't possible, but on average I've been getting closer. If this is your goal too, beware the money trap. I've always preferred jobs that earned less if they gave me more time. They gave me more is preferred earns, which didn't pay off in the short term but did in the long term. The holidays are like 80 of the reason I went into teaching. Any advice for future teachers? Watch the dog whisper. I am deadly serious about this. It's also my advice for new parents. What do you consider the biggest threat to humanity? Last quant video I mentioned opinions and how to change them. The hardest changes are the ones where you reinvested in the idea. And I've been a techno-optimist 100 all of my life. But this book put a real asterisk on that in a way that I didn't want. And now artificial intelligence is on my near-term threat list in a deeply unwelcome way. But it would be self-delusional to ignore a convincing argument because I don't want it to be true. You can watch more discussion on Hello Internet if you click here. Techno-optimists beware. If you couldn't live in the UK anymore, where would you move? In my ideal life, I would live in many different places for a year or two at a time, but that's not really practical now. If I had to pick a new city at this very moment, would be Amsterdam. Why are you such a fan of the Dutch? Sincerely, a tulip-growing, windmill building, haggis log eating, container ship moving, ocean conquering guy. Answered your own question there. Regarding humans need not apply. What do you think we should do to prepare ourselves for mass unemployment? I don't know. The kind of automation I worry about is the same kind that creates Star Trek abundance. The transition from here to there worries me, and solutions that would work in this world might not work in the in-between. Also, I am open to the idea that I may be wrong about automation, and many have good arguments as to why. Technology decreasing jobs goes against all the data from all the history of all the world's economies. But I think we'll find out sooner than most people expect. Tesla's are quasi-automated already, and automation of transport is my prediction for the biggest, most visible impact on employment. Even pizza companies are getting into the auto business. Which games have you been playing recently? Way too much Factorio. Way too much. Also Grimworld, and much to me own surprise American Truck Simulator. So relaxing. I cannot wait for them to add the rest of the states and Canada. Please, can we see your battle station? It used to look like this, but I've just set up a brand new one and it looks like this. Would you recommend going to university? Yeah, maybe. Devil's in the details though. At one extreme, and if you want to take out tens of thousands of dollars in loans to pursue a degree in something that ends in studies, you'd be better off taking that money and starting a restaurant. Don't get me wrong, starting a restaurant is a terrible idea, but it's a better terrible idea. On the other end, if you live in a country that pays for college and you're getting a degree in a high-paying field, that's easy to recommend. But between those extremes is where difficult decisions lie. Personally, I went to college and took out a loan and got a degree close to this end of the spectrum. But I only felt comfortable doing that because I was also getting a degree on this end of the spectrum. Shock surprise, this one paid me bills and this one was a nice hobby. What's a piece of advice you would give to people that are just getting out of college? Your life is in your hands alone now. This is the best and worst thing about adulthood. Would you have a surgery to get rid of your glasses? Jesus Christ, man, have you ever seen a surgery? You reawake. It's your eyes. I'll consider a surgery only when I can replace them fully. Is a hot dog a sandwich? No, obviously not. Oh, maybe. Which way is the most effective method of car transport? Driving on the left or the right? It doesn't matter, only agreement matters. What is your country in your mind? Do you consider yourself American or British? To live abroad is to be constantly reminded of outsider status, so I don't feel remotely British, but having lived in the for the whole of me adult life, however, now when I go back to America, feels like Canada. Familiar yet foreign. So I am a bit homeless, but it doesn't matter because people overvalue national identities anyway. In the end, I feel like someone who grew up in America and is just a person in the world. If you could teach someone something in a minute or less that would benefit them for the rest of their life, what would it be? Here's a super fast way to iron your clothes. Don't bother. Buy clothes that don't need ironing. I've just saved you hundreds of hours of your life. You welcome. Do you have a New Year's resolution? If so, what? I think New Year's resolutions are dumb and designed to fail. I mean, how many of you have already totally abandoned your New Year's resolutions? But I don't like themes for the year. This is me year of less. You all need to go to Cortex for a full explanation because it's a bit complicated and not what it sounds like, and I'm still kind of working on it. What's your handwriting like? Messy and to the surprise of many. Cursive. How do you handle stress? Poorly. My stress management technique is to remove the source. I'd rather eliminate the problem than get better at dealing with it. Top 5 country flags. It's hard to separate my thoughts on national flags from the countries themselves. Scrolling through the list, I find myself drawn to the Canadian flag, the Cook of Germany, and Nordic flags, but it's because I like those places. That said, I am also a sucker for a strong design in the center like Barbados and Kenya. And most national flags are pretty good if a little safe. They read no abomination like the state flags. It's harder to pick the top out of a bunch of mostly good designs as opposed to picking the best out of a pile of poo. What's the best book you read last year? I didn't read as many as I would have liked, but I'm going to pick So You've Been Publicly Shamed as me book of the year. If I designed a school curriculum, it would be required reading for the Living on the Internet module. How long did it take you to sort through these questions? I divide me working time into units. This unit is 40 minutes long, and I spent 5 units over a couple of days looking at the most voted questions and all of the questions in random order and selecting the ones that interested me. Then many more units writing various drafts. This script started at a 5,000 boring messy words and got cut to 2,000 hopefully more interesting words. And thank you to everyone who submitted questions. I am aware that I only got to 0.5% of them, so we'll have to do this again sometime.